so you this is kind of, I guess, the biographical aspect of the interview. Like, what made you kind of be like, yeah, I like art? Like, would your parents did they foster that in you?
Yeah, I reckon definitely. I mean, I always drew from a young age, like every kid does, but I think the reason I kept drawing is probably because my parents were so supportive and because I enjoyed it, and they actually like saw it as a viable career choice. So, in high school, when I didn't want to do maths and sciences anymore, like when other parents might have been unsure about that, they were really supportive. And there's actually like this frame in the background. This is the room I grew up in, and they put up this frame with all this fish wire, and throughout like growing up, that was always filled with all my drawings and things. So I was very lucky.
How old were you when you came over from overseas? Like, how old were you?
I would have been 5, and then I didn't know any English. Like, Dutch is my first language, and I still speak it at home and everything. But then I guess 5 is like a good age where you just learn the accent, so no one would know. Yeah.
And would you say that, like, as you grew up, your decision to become a creative professional became like more certain?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there was ever a doubt in my mind that I would go into a creative career, which is, again, it's probably quite rare. But yeah, like I graduated high school and like didn't even apply for uni. Like, I just wanted to go to art school.
I know art school is like a very contentious idea in the creative world. Some people are so for it, some people are so against it. And if you had your time again, would you go back?
I would probably go to a different art school. But yes, I think I would. Because like the art school I went to was in my small town of Dunedin. And that also is kind of a bubble in itself. So in a lot of ways, I would have liked to go to a bigger city to go to an art school. Like, overseas would have been great, but even Wellington would have been amazing. But yeah, I would go back. It's just I don't know, you don't really get that opportunity again to fully focus on your art ever again. Even if you're in a creative career, you're always working for other people or you're always meeting a brief. Whereas like that time at art school, like you'll never get that focused amount of time ever to work on just what you want to work on. So yeah, I reckon I would.
Do you miss that?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I definitely do. The thing is, like, you can always make time. I really believe that. Like, you do get tired. Like, your mind gets tired if you work in a creative job all the time. But yeah, I do. I wish I had more time.
You say that it's like hard because creative jobs are so competitive. I mean, most, like, all jobs are competitive. I guess it's a very specific type of competition in creative industries. Would you say that gets like, how would you say that impacts your work?
It's interesting that you call it competition. I think it is. Yeah.
It's kind of like built into comparison too, I think, just to add a footnote to that.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, maybe advertising is slightly different because, I've got a salary job now. I'm not fighting for freelance work all the time, which was like the case a couple of years ago. But I think it's just, especially advertising, is just too fast paced to kind of like get a breather. But at the same time, that's what I love about it as well, because you're constantly working on something new. But yeah, it's also the kind of industry where if you don't put in 100%, you're really not going to get anywhere. So yeah, it can be tough.
How is the transition from freelancing to a salaried job for you?
I felt really adult. I was like, oh wow, I can actually like sustain this lifestyle, whereas freelance can be a bit scary. Like, you don't really know if you're going to have a next job, and you're constantly kind of like trying to network as much as possible and keep your ear out for things, which was fun in itself because you, again, are like working on lots of different things. But going into a salary job, I mean, I'm in an office, there's like 200 other people around. It's like a completely different world.
Yeah. Did you ever have that idea in your head of like, how was your relationship to and view of like corporate creative work? Did you always think like, yes, I would do that? Or were you kind of always like, maybe it's a bit more stifling than like, you know, being able to pick and like being able to like express your creative work in a different way, if that makes sense?
My hot take on that is that probably all art is corporate work to some extent. Like if you're going to make a living off of it, it's got to be corporate to some extent. And you know, a lot of people kind of feel like you're going to be a sellout if you're going to go out and work for somebody else. And I just think you can't look at it that way. Otherwise you will, if you look at it that way, you will become a sellout and you'll just sort of do whatever the job requires and not really put in your own viewpoint or care that much. But if you actually give every opportunity a bit of yourself and you actually try to make everything as fun and creative as possible, I'm not going to say advertising is art because it's not. And it can be like, you know, obviously clients can be tough sometimes, but I don't know. I just think in a corporate world, you've got to make every brief fun for yourself because otherwise you're just going to, I don't know, roll over, I guess. That whole art and business debate, obviously I've like talked about it a lot because I've literally got both sides, but I just find it so tired. Who cares? Yeah. Make money off your art. Who cares? Like, as long as you're enjoying it and you're being authentic. Like, when it goes wrong is when you're putting something out into the world for a client that you don't believe in, or you know, because we've got at work, we work for energy companies that are genuinely polluting the planet and killing us all. So I prefer not to work on those because that's when like your morality comes in. But on the whole, fuck it, just like make money. Yeah. Why is it such a bad thing? That stigma is not at all in like music, for instance, where like no one's like, oh, I wrote a song, but I'm not going to show anyone and I don't want to make money off of it because that's not, you know, then you'd be a sellout. That's just, why is it that way with art? I get really sick of it.
It's interesting hearing people's different viewpoints. Do you like, are you happy that it's your way, or if it was up to you, would you like want artists to hold a different place in society and like how they operate?
I think there should be more of a balance. What's tough at the moment is that there really is only kind of one or two ways that you can be a professional artist. Like you can, yeah, I guess there's a few ways. You can go into like the corporate salary world, you can do like freelance work, or you could go into like a gallery space. And the gallery space is obviously nearly impossible nowadays. Like that's not, you can't just like rock up and say, I want to show my work here. That's not really how it works. Freelance work is a little bit more accessible. And then salary work is obviously the one that's like really sustainable, but a lot of people don't want to go into that space. But I reckon there should be some other kind of avenue for artists to take, like especially young artists who don't really know what they want to do. There should be some kind of funding for those people, especially because you are putting your lifestyle on the line when you want to be an artist. You have to go through that space, that time, I should say, of being a bit poor, like being a starving artist. And a lot of people can't afford that, you know, because they don't come from a background where they can actually do that. So I think, yeah, I like that art is being seen as a job, because I do think that that's the case. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, you're talented, you like to draw, do it for free. That's not, it's a job. So I like that, but there should be an easier avenue for young artists to actually make their way into those spaces. Yeah, without sacrificing, you know, working in a supermarket or something while you're trying to like make this other career on the side. That's just not viable.
Yeah, I agree. I think like especially community work could be like a really good way of doing that. Like if, you know, they were given money by councils and stuff to like maybe even mentor younger students, or like community projects, like, you know, I guess like as an art director, you know, the importance of like project management and stuff too. So like being able to have programs where they can express that aspect of like skilling up as an artist too would be like fantastic.
Totally. That's not something that they teach you at art school, like project management or anything. But you know, other careers have internships and mentorships, and like, yeah, imagine if you could intern under like just famous artists. That would be, but that's not normal. That's not a thing in this industry.
I guess the next logical thing to ask you about would be to put a focus on your art itself, and like that's like your transition from like that very weird space of time, like on DeviantArt and Tumblr and stuff, to like getting your portfolio ready for jobs and freelancing, your comic, your sex comic, and also your art direction, and how they kind of all relate to each other.
Yeah, that's a big big question, I guess.
Well, it's like I said in the email, like you've really diversified yourself.
Yeah, that's true. I actually do pride myself in kind of having a diverse set of skills, especially like going into advertising. There's a lot of people that graduate with an advertising degree and they get into the industry no problem. But I find that the most interesting creatives are a lot of the time people that haven't studied advertising and come from a completely different background and kind of have a new take. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, at art school, I kind of thought, you know, I want to be a real artist. I want to be a cartoonist. I want to be a animator. That was my main thing. So I moved to Melbourne to be an animator. And then I did a few freelance jobs as an animator, and I was like, holy, there's actually like jobs out here for this. Because they do some big projects in Melbourne, like randomly, a lot of the time for like even American clients, music videos and things like that, especially in the 2D animation space. So that was what I was really excited about. And then my dad was in advertising. So he was like, I think you'd be a good art director. And I was like, no, that's okay. I want to be a real artist. And then I ended up doing award school, which is this like 10-week course where you get a new advertising brief every week, and you get mentors from the industry that like help you with your work and critique it and things like that. And then I was like, oh, actually, this is pretty fun. Like you get to stretch a different kind of creative muscle. So then I got a job out of that, and I ended up being an art director. And then, you know, for the first couple of years, I still had a foot out the door because I was like, oh, I don't know about this. Like, I'm really enjoying like feeling like a successful business lady, but maybe I still want to be an animator. So I had one foot out the door, and I wasn't getting the opportunities that I wanted at work because I wasn't, you know, fully committed. So then we started the comic, my copywriter and I, because, you know, in advertising, you've got an art director and a copywriter, and you sort of like a corporate marriage. And so we started the comic together, and then that was fun. And then eventually, like, I kind of realized that I wasn't getting the opportunities I wanted because I wasn't putting in 100%. So then fully committed myself to advertising. And all the while, like, I still had all these side projects from when I had one foot out the door. So I'm just sort of carrying everything with me. So yeah, but at the same time, it's really fun because otherwise, like now, we're still developing that comic, and it might turn into a bigger project down the line. So yeah, I mean, spreading yourself thin can be hard, and you get a lot of burnout, and again, you don't get the opportunities you want in the different places. But at the same time, it does keep everything fun because I don't know, it keeps it fresh, I guess. I definitely didn't like do all of this consciously because I felt like I had to in order to like be a better professional. It all just kind of happened. Yeah.
What was kind of like your relationship, because you did have people on, you know, YouTube following what you're doing? Do you still have like, what was your little pocket, like your pocket of following? Like, how was that for you? Did you find that like you ever thought maybe I could become like an art influencer or like full-time YouTuber? Like, did you ever think about that?
Totally. I think that's what made a career in art way more viable for me, because I was like, oh, I already have this following behind me, which I got on Tumblr for drawing Harry Potter fan art. So that it's funny, like that actually, my first commission was Harry Potter fan art, and I was, you know, getting paid for drawing. So I was like, oh, there is a career in this. So yeah, definitely. I thought about it, but it's a lot of work. It's more work, I think, to try and be that influencer than to just try and be a freelancer and post stuff occasionally, for me at least, because it's a lot of maintenance and there's a lot of expectation. You know, all these people are following you and they're expecting not only like constant work, but also a certain type of work. And if you deviate from that, maybe you'll lose followers, and that's actually your income gone if you lose followers and people lose interest in you. So yeah, I did think about it, but it was a bit too scary.
I know a lot of artists have like an interesting relationship with like their followers and stuff. Do you still get people like how would you say, what would characterize your following, and has that changed over time?
Oh, it's definitely changed. What's funny is that I think the demographic of people that follow me haven't really changed. They've like aged with me, and it's still mostly women. But yeah, at first it was like fan art. So it was just a bunch of nerds that were following me for like some spicy fan art. And now I think that people actually see my art for my art and my style, as opposed to just what it's depicting. So like, that's nice. But on the whole, it's pretty much stayed like just mostly people like me, which is funny because it's almost like they're relating to the artist more than they are the art.
You have kind of like a sense of humor in your work, which I think is one of the things, like when personality really shines through, like there's a certain attitude and stuff that I've always like admired about your art. How important to you is it that you kind of like keep that fun element in your art?
Oh, it's essential. I feel like if it isn't fun, then what's the point? And I also like, I don't know, I think I'm a funny person, but I don't know. I think like your art is a reflection of yourself. So if that comes through, like that's also a compliment to the artist, I guess. I think I have too many influences to count at this point. Like the way you create your own style is by picking what you like from like hundreds and hundreds of different people. So, but definitely at first I was inspired by all those like deviant artists. And then it kind of graduated to studying art history, and I was like, oh, I actually like, you know, Lucian Freud and Edward Hopper and all these other kind of like traditional painters. And then, you know, Instagram came around and you've suddenly got like thousands and thousands and thousands of people to take influence from. So I don't know, I think it's kind of a mix of a lot of things.